pass along party line, which I think is unfortunate, because I think it's a good budget, but it will pass nonetheless. Mr. President, we had an unprecedented level of openness and transparency through this entire budget process over the last several months. Most recently, we've had 9 meetings of budget committees, all of whom received presentations by the county finance team. We've had hours of questions and answers, all in the light of day. We've had pages of questions submitted to the county finance team, and answers to those questions were provided in writing in a timely fashion. I'd like to thank the members of the minority caucus who commended and thanked the budget team for doing just that, proving to be, or doing an excellent job at answering our questions over the last several weeks. Even today at the 11th hour, when members of the minority requested a tour of 80 Main Street, the building that has concern on both sides of the aisle with regards to lease issues, it was arranged right away. Members of the Democratic caucus and a Republican legislator went on that tour. I think all of this is great stuff. I find it very encouraging. I'm also encouraged that this budget contains now 4 bipartisan referrals, one that passed with a little bit of straining, and 3 more to come that I think will pass with a little less straining. I think that these are bellwethers for a very positive future for this legislature, this county, and this community. It hasn't been without some difficulty, as has just been demonstrated in our discussion over a bipartisan amendment that I think that all of us are pleased with, regardless of the fact that we didn't necessarily agree on the amount. It's movement in the right direction. The fruit of all of these, as I mentioned, are going to be some referrals that we're going to consider later in the evening. The other thing that I think is important is that we saw the formation of a bipartisan budget work group. This is even a move that was applauded by the editorial board in this community. The editorial board hasn't necessarily been a friend to this party, to this administration, or this caucus, but I thank them for recognizing our work at the bipartisan budget work group. At that bipartisan budget work group, at the request of the minority caucus, we arranged for the first time ever access to the county independent auditors for question and answers, and we'll be talking about that issue later as well. But despite all of this, we have seen not one idea of substance from the Democrats. This is disappointing to me with regards to our structural imbalance. I am not alone in that disappointment. The editorial board shared our disappointment as well. Not once was I approached to consider any amendments that I presume that we're about to hear ahead of this meeting. No ideas were brought forth during the bipartisan budget meetings to address the structural imbalance that we face in this county. This, of course, is the perfect venue, bipartisan budget work group, is the perfect venue for us to be discussing these issues that present to us perennially. But none were forthcoming. Instead, tonight, as in other such meetings, we'll have to endure hours of political theater, partisan bickering, and abject wasting of time that serves only to exacerbate the partisan divisiveness that exists in this community. And it really breaks my heart, because I believe wholeheartedly in bipartisan efforts. I think that our work this year in producing these 4 referrals stands as testimony to that. And we can do better for the taxpayers of this community. I have a few hopes for tonight that I would like to share with everyone, particularly my friend Harry Bronson, who's been a gentleman, by the way, through this entire process. My hope is that the groundwork that we have laid for bipartisan cooperation will make this night atypical. I hope that we won't be here till midnight. My hope is that we can bring issues of substance back to the bipartisan budget work group, and that we can work together to formulate solutions, real solutions, to the structural issues that face this county's budget. My hope is that we defy history tonight, we conquer partisan politics, and agree to continue to act proactively for the taxpayers of this community. That's my hope in going forward from this moment on in these discussions. Most of all, Mr. President, I hope we can go over it. Thank you very much for your discussion.
Mr. President, certainly going home early is a fine objective, but let us not forget that our primary objective tonight is representing the taxpayers of this county. And in representing the taxpayers of this county, it's very important that we thoroughly investigate the budget. We look at every last detail in the budget. Certainly, we've had opportunities to do some of that as we've gone through the committee cycles that are required by our charter, and we've gone through the public hearing that's required by our charter. And certainly, we did thank the administration for responding to a lot of questions that we asked. But on this side of the aisle, we believe strongly that our primary objective is representing those who put us into office. And to fully represent those who put us into office, we need to ask difficult questions, we need to probe, we need to investigate, and we need to seek answers, thorough answers, and transparent answers, and answers that will allow us to make in our best judgment, whatever that judgment may be, in our best judgment, that we make a decision that's in the best interest of those whom we represent. If asking hours of questions and having suggestions brought up through amendments from this side of the aisle is problematic, I think that we need to reconsider why we're members of this honorable body. Certainly, we just entertained an amendment from the other side of the aisle where Legislator Haney was asked to second at the very last second of the introduction of the amendment. Indeed, it was the last statement of the introduction of the amendment. So let's not fool ourselves by saying that we both, on both sides of these aisles, we don't introduce amendments. Indeed, that's our job. We ought to be doing it, and we're going to continue to do that. Also, regarding bipartisanship. You know, bipartisanship is a fine word. It's a fine objective. But let's not confuse what it means. Bipartisanship does not mean that you do everything that the other side wants. It doesn't mean that just because members are in the majority that you have to agree with them. And it doesn't mean that you don't look with a very critical eye and with the interest of the taxpayers in mind. You don't look at every aspect of every referral, and in particular, a budget adoption referral. That is not the meaning of bipartisanship. Indeed, a budget is a statement of the overriding policy of every aspect of the operation of this county. And to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and to have inquiry, and to probe, is an absolute necessity and is the charge of every member of this body. Therefore, I'm pleased to be here tonight representing the constituents with whom I represent and being a voice for the taxpayers in this county. And I'm pleased to stand up here and say, I'm willing to do the work and I'm willing to endure the hours, whatever they end up being. But I also understand that we need to do that work in such a way that's respectful, that's honest, that's transparent, and that's accountable. We will do that this evening. We'll engage in our jobs, and hopefully we will walk away having fruitful debate and having legislators making the decisions that they feel are the decisions they ought to make in representing their constituents. Thank you.
Mr. White. Happy holidays, everybody. Mr. President, it often baffles me, Mr. President, to sit here. And I guess, I think Mr. Croucher feels if he says bipartisan enough, keep saying it over and over and over again, like you tell your kids, you keep telling them, you can, eventually they don't believe they can. So I guess, we're not fooled here tonight. You can't say bipartisan 1,000 times and think that the people here in Monroe County are going to believe that it's bipartisan. The fact of the matter is, Mr. President, it's been said here tonight that we haven't brought any ideas. to this body. I submit to you, Mr. President, that we brought many ideas, and for the record,